I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Monday, September the 9th, 2013. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry reiterated President Obama's prior statements that military action in Syria, if taken by the U.S., would be very limited, very targeted, and very short-term. Kerry told reporters in London today, "We are not going to war. We will not have people at risk that way." Further saying we will be able to hold Bashar Assad accountable in a very limited, very targeted, very short-term effort. Kerry made the comments during a press conference with British Secretary of State William Hague. Kerry arrived in England yesterday to hold talks over the crisis in Syria. Meanwhile, in an interview with Charlie Rose, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad warned America and its allies of multiple forms of retaliation if the U.S. goes ahead with a military strike.
Will there be attacks against American bases in the Middle East if there's an airstrike?
You should expect everything. You should expect everything. Not necessarily through the government. It's not only the governments are not the only player in this region. You have different parties, you have different factions, you have different ideology. You have everything in this region now.
And during his stay in London, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry also met with European Union Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, who announced that a delegation from the EU is set to arrive in Israel today. France's news agency AFP reports that a delegation from the EU will visit Israel to calm Israeli concerns about the recent EU ban of funding of Israeli organizations over the Green Line. During a news conference held yesterday, Ashton said, alongside Kerry, that of course the EU wants to continue to have a strong relationship with Israel, and that a team would be sent to Israel today to make sure the implementation of the ban was done very sensitively. Well, before arriving in London, Kerry was in Paris earlier yesterday, where he met with a delegation from the Arab League regarding the status of peace talks between the Palestinians and Israel. The U.S. State Department released a statement after the meeting, saying that the delegation expressed its full support for the Secretary of State's efforts and for the agreed-upon 9-month timeline for the negotiations. The State Department also said that the Arab League ministers had expressed concern over Israeli settlement activity in the West Bank, as well as other issues, but that the delegation hopes that the ongoing direct permanent status negotiations will lead to a resolution that achieves a just and lasting peace through resolving all permanent status issues as a major step towards comprehensive Middle East peace, which will contribute to regional security and stability. Secretary of State Kerry also reportedly met with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in London on the status of peace talks with Israel. However, no details were released from that meeting. Israel's Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon reassured Israelis yesterday that they can go ahead with their regular routines after holding a security evaluation on the Syrian crisis earlier in the day. Ya'alon, who spoke before the 13th Annual World Summit Conference held by the Institute for Counterterrorism in Herzliya, said Israel's neighbors, particularly Syria, understand that anyone who challenges us will meet the IDF's power, further saying we're not involved in the Syrian civil war unless our interests are harmed or the red lines we set are crossed. Ya'alon defined Israel's red lines as an attempt by Syria to transfer quality weapons to terrorist organizations, with an emphasis on Hezbollah transferring chemical weapons and harming Israel's sovereignty. And likely referencing the debate in the U.S. regarding possible military action against President Assad's regime, Ya'alon said we're prepared for the consequence of action or inaction in Syria. And in light of a possible American strike, Ynet reports that Israel deployed an Iron Dome battery in the Jerusalem area yesterday. An IDF military spokeswoman would not comment about the deployment of the defense battery, except to say that defense systems are deployed in accordance with situation assessments. Last month, the battery was set up in the greater Tel Aviv area. It was later removed after the IDF lowered its alert level due to the White House's decision to seek the authorization of Congress before any Syrian strike. U.S. Congress is due to begin debating the issue this week after returning from its summer break today. And the American Jewish Committee is renewing its calls for support of President Obama's proposed military action in Syria. joining many Jewish organizations who are urging Congress to approve such an action after Syrian President Assad's use of chemical weapons last month. The AJC had written a letter to all U.S. senators and representatives, as we reported to you early last week. And in an article published in the Jerusalem Post and in the Huffington Post shortly after that, AJC Executive Director David Harris once again urged support, writing, "If the United States now flinches, and despite our declared red line, let Syria get away with the use of chemical weapons, then what is the message sent to the world?" Harris also expressed deep disappointment with the international community's lack of coordinated reaction to Assad's chemical attack, saying it would obviously be better if the UN Security Council could come together and act in unison against the Assad regime's reprehensible use of chemical weapons. But he said the U.S. ought to assert its moral leadership and take action, one that, as the president has said, would be a short-term targeted attack that would not involve U.S. troops on the ground. Researchers at Hebrew University today announced the discovery of a rare collection of Byzantine-era gold and silver artifacts. The collection is called the Ophel Treasure and was unveiled today. It includes 36 gold and silver coins and a large gold medallion believed to date back to 614 CE. The findings were unearthed near the southern wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City. Dr. Eilat Mazar, who is a third-generation archaeologist at the university's Institute of Archaeology, has led the Ophel excavation since 2009. She said she believes that the 10-centimeter medallion, which was found with the coins, was used to adorn an ancient Torah scroll. If the medallion was indeed an ornament for a Torah scroll, it is the earliest such archaeological find in history. And Mazar described the findings as a breathtaking, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And finally today, according to a new report published, Israel ranks number 11 on the scale of global happiness. In a new research report carried out by the Earth Institute at Columbia University, Israel moved up from 14th place last year to 11th this year. The report measures a variety of parameters, including life expectancy, infant mortality, socioeconomic status, and education. The U.S. ranked 17, with apparently the happiest people in the world residing in Denmark. And that's Shalom TV's news update from Monday, September the 9th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.